I've been wanting to flex my art muscle a little bit and try a challenge, and what better way to do that than the 3 marker challenge. So hi everyone, I'm Ward and welcome to my channel Wardrawsalot, and today I'm going to put myself to the test to see if I can make something cohesive out of 3 random markers. To pick our 3 random markers, I'm going to be using the Copic app, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do it, so let's click inside. This app usually helps keep track of what Copic markers you have and what refills and all that, and it's so much easier than me writing everything down. So once I painstakingly put everything in there, I realized that you can kind of scroll through all the colors and it randomly lands on one. So that's exactly how I went about this method. Every time I do a color, I'll restart on 0 and then scroll along to find it just so it's at an even plane every time. And the first color we ended up getting was RV23, which means Red Violet 23. It's a really pink, bright color. The second color, of course, after starting at 0, ended up being E41, which is an earth tone 41 pearl white. It can be used usually as a skin tone. I like using it for blonde hair personally, more than a skin tone. The third color, again starting at 0, ended up being BG11, which is blue-green 11, which is kind of like a nice minty blue. Now that we have our 3 fighters up, it's time to swatch them and see what I can at least get out of these colors to put on a character. The first thing we're going to do is swatch down the colors at their base, which means that there's nothing on it or around it or whatever. So I'm going to start off with E41. We know that it's a skin tone kind of and can be used for hair. BG11, which is kind of like a minty color. It's not too dark and it's not too light. They almost kind of look similar toned to E41. But then we have a super vibrant RV23, just like this really bright pink that kind of throws everything off. Now, just because we have those 3 markers doesn't mean we're limited to those 3 colors. Like any color, once you mix them together, they make a new color. So I decided to take them and kind of layer them up and see what it would give me. I put down a square of E41, and on top of that I mixed BG11 and RV23, kind of like layering it to see if it would change the color. There wasn't much of a change, but it did dull it out. With the BG11, when I put the E41 on top, it kind of disappeared into it and made it look a little yellowish, and the pink became more of a purplish pink, which kind of makes sense if we look at the color wheel and how the colors mix and all that jazz that I can't explain because I just can't. I barely understand it myself half the time. And then RV23, once I put the E41 and BG11 on top, they kind of just washed it out completely. So my best chances at shading are laying down BG11 and then RV23 on top, and then maybe adding BG11 on top of RV23. This will be our test subject for the day, a OC just trying to see if he's double jointed in his pinky and can put it down. And apparently he can, so nice on him. Okay, so for reference, I'm gonna let you guys know. Whenever I do a marker illustration, any of them that you go through on my channel, all of those marker illustrations include at least anywhere between 15 and 25 markers on the regular. Usually the skin alone will take me 5 to 6 markers because I really like a smooth blend, nice transitions. I really like adding certain tones in there and colors, and to be limited down to only 3 markers. At first I was like, yo, I got this, and then I was like, wait, I don't think I got this. And it took me a second. I really had to step back and think how I'm gonna layer these colors properly without making them all look like the same tone everywhere, and without making the drawing look gross. What do I mean by not making it look gross? Well, if you just use the same color over and over again, things can look muddy really quickly, and on top of that can look like there's no defining features anywhere. So if the hair, which I'm doing here, is blonde and the skin tone is blonde, but they're both the same skin tone because it's just there's no shading, it's gonna look gross. So what I did to combat that was mix colors in certain areas just to make sure they would pop a little bit better. So I thought of like this pseudo strawberry blonde by adding in the pink tips and then blending out the pink tips with E41 to try and make it look a little bit more digestible in comparison. And then next to that, I made sure to put green on the skin, or BG11, which is like the minty green, on the skin for the purpose of shading. So it looks like there's some kind of contrast between the pink and the green and the the blonde, which is the earth tone, all together in that one space. Especially when it comes to like the face and the hair, it's very condensed and jam-packed. So if you don't have enough breathing room in between those items, you're gonna get lost within what you're looking at, you know? And that's the whole point of art, is you don't want someone to get lost in it unless it's purposeful. But mine isn't purposeful. Mine is definitely definitely, it's right there in front of you, and it's laid out, and it's not trying to be anything other than it is. It's literally just a dude. Now when it comes to shading, very limited here. I'm extremely limited. So what I did is I layered some colors on top of each other like I stated before, but in order to make that purplish color, I had to layer down the green, then layer down RV23, which is the pink, then go on top with the green again. So this way it kind of gives like a purple effect in some areas to give it like some pseudo shading at the very least. Because whenever I shade normally, I have not like one shade tone, I have like maybe 2, 3, 4 sometimes, depending on what I'm drawing, what I want to convey, what I want the character to look like. So although I have green for shading, I also wanted even deeper shading, and that's when I was like, okay, let's mix it together to give that purple in there, to make it look like some spaces are a little bit deeper, or at least a little darker shaded than other spaces. When it came to the clothing, I wanted to tie back in some more pink because I noticed that a lot of the drawing was green, and that's because majority of the shading was that color. So I decided to make the shirt pink and then layer it with some green to help with the shading, layer back on some pink again to kind of wash that green tone out, but the green tone is still there regardless. It looks a little purpley, it kind of looks very muted purple if anything. And as you can tell here, I started inking. I completely forgot to cut this part out. The app has been giving me troubles all night, so I'm not even going to bother cutting it out because a lot of stuff would have to be started over again. So fuck that. So I took my my liner, of course, and I decided to try and play with my liner as smartly as I could here. By the way, I don't know if using liner is necessarily cheating here. I don't think it is. I have to line the drawing with something, and it couldn't be the marker colors themselves. So yeah, black liner it is. I decided to go around with the black liner and kind of smartly put in some thicker lines and some thinner lines to kind of help push even further that there's a distinction between both the skin, the hair, the eyes, the everything. So in some spaces, like where like the bangs are, they're a little thicker, and the outside edges of the hair too, along with giving thicker lines around the nose or the eyes and shading under the chin. Usually I like to let the liner do it for me because it's flexible, and it'll kind of, if I just press harder or lighter, it'll kind of change the width and variation of the liner. But here I realized I had to go in purposefully and do that, otherwise it would look too flat and the colors would look even more like they're not doing anything. Normally I can kind of, I'll admit, be lazy and let the colors do the talking for me and let the liner do the work for me. But this time I was like, okay, if I don't kind of make a distinction in some areas and spaces, it's not going to look right. But what I did learn from this was that I do kind of like going back in and thickening it up, so I shouldn't be as lazy with not doing that. Even though the pen does the work for me, I should also try and go back in physically, just because I feel like it looks nicer personally. Some people like really thin lines, some people like super thick. I'm talking like really thick ass lines, but I like somewhere in the in-between where some spots just show a little bit more oomph and some less, just so there's a nice variation between the two and you can kind of read out the character nicely. Now, after all of that, I finished the character, and I think he came out pretty alright for only using 3 markers. But I want to know, what do you think? Could I have done better? Was there something else I could have tried? Or should I try the challenge again? Or did the character come out good in your opinion as well? So yeah, thanks for watching, and remember, I love you. Bye!